Right now in South Korea, imagine you are a 39-year-old man who has done everything right. You studied hard, you landed a stable government job, and you finally decided to settle down. You think you are starting a new life with the woman you love, but instead you have accidentally signed up to be the chief financial officer of a family that does not even like you. Your parents, who spent 40 years working themselves to the bone, take every single penny of their retirement savings to buy you an apartment. Because your future mother-in-law looked them in the eye and said her daughter could never live in a simple villa. She said it would be an embarrassment to her family. So, your parents empty their bank accounts to give you that shiny concrete box in the sky. But then, a few months later, you find out something that makes your blood run cold. That same mother-in-law, the one who cried about being too poor to help with your wedding, just dropped nearly $500,000 to buy a luxury home for her own son. And her son? He is a part-time worker who has never held a steady job in his life. He basically stumbled into a marriage because of a surprise pregnancy. And suddenly, he is living in a house that you and your parents essentially funded. How? Because by making you pay for everything for her daughter, the mother-in-law saved all her cash to dump it into the lap of her favorite child. You are not a husband, you are a one-way pipe moving wealth. From your hard-working parents directly into the pocket of a guy who has never broken a sweat. But why would they actually demand this in the first place? Why does this specific, weirdly aggressive dynamic happen? If you look at the way the market works in this part of the world, everything has become a product. People are not just people anymore. They are assets to be traded or mined for value. In this ruthless, hyper-competitive environment, marriage has stopped being a union of hearts and started being a hostile takeover. For many women in this specific cultural bubble, the marriage market is the last place where they can grab a piece of the financial pie. Before the doors slam shut, they are raised in a system that tells them they are a disposable part of their own family once they marry out. So they feel this desperate, frantic need to secure their own bag by any means necessary. It is not about love, it is about finding a high-value provider who can act as a shield. They push for the most expensive house and the most prestigious status because, in their minds, if they do not get it now, they will never have it. This creates a culture where people are aggressively fighting for every cent, treating their partners like atemans rather than teammates. It is the ultimate result of a society where money is the only language anyone speaks anymore. And if you are not the one doing the extracting, you are the one being extracted. So, you have to ask the next logical question. How did the culture get so twisted that parents would actively ruin their daughter's marriage just to pad their son's pockets? To understand this, you have to look at the weird contradiction of a society that wants all the perks of the modern world but clings to the most toxic parts of the past. There is this obsession with the apartment. In this country, an apartment is not just a place to sleep, it is a rank in a video game. If you live in a villa, you are a low-level player. If you live in a branded apartment complex, you are elite. The older generation is terrified of their sons failing because they do not have a safety net from the government. So, they treat their daughters like a source of revenue. Once the daughter is married off to a successful man, the parents consider her sold. She is off the books. Now they can focus all their resources on the heir. They use the son-in-law as a buffer. They figure, since he has a good job and his parents have some savings, he should be the one to carry the burden of the daughter's life. This lets them take every bit of their own wealth and gift it to their son, ensuring their own bloodline stays on top. It is a cold, calculated move, where the daughter is essentially a middleman in a wealth transfer between two men who have never even met. They exploit the modern husband's desire to be a supportive, equal partner to mask their own traditional, greedy goals. They talk about equality when it is time for him to do the dishes, but they talk about manly duty when it is time to pay the $500,000 bill for the house. So what happens when these people get exactly what they ask for? What is the result of all this manipulation and one-sided greed? Well, the whole system is currently blowing up in their faces, and hypocrisy is almost funny if it wasn't so tragic. You have these wives who are constantly sending money back to their parents every month, even though their parents are actually wealthier than they are. They do it to feel like good daughters, completely ignoring the fact that their parents abandoned their financial interests the second they found a husband to foot the bill. But here is the kicker. The men are finally waking up. They are looking at their own parents, who are now 70 years old and working low-wage security jobs because they gave away their retirement to buy a house for a daughter-in-law who does not even respect them. They see their brother-in-law driving a nice car and living in a house he did not earn, all because they were the responsible ones who played by the rules. The result is what people are calling a marriage strike. Men are just opting out. They are looking at the math and realizing that the entry fee for a family is a suicide mission. Why would you spend your entire life working just to be a host for a group of parasites who view you as a service provider rather than a human being? The cold logic of the market is finally punishing the greed. When you treat people like commodities, they eventually stop showing up to the market. Think about the sheer irony of the situation. The very parents who pushed their daughter to marry a rich man so she would be taken care of are the ones who make sure she is never truly secure. They drain her husband's family of their liquid cash, leaving the young couple with a massive concrete asset but no actual money to live their lives. They create a zero-trust environment where everyone is looking over their shoulder, wondering who is stealing from whom. It is like a blood transfusion, where the donor thinks their blood is going to save a dying patient, but halfway through they realize the tube has been diverted. The blood isn't going into the patient, it is being pumped into a bucket in the next room, which the doctor then carries out to give to his lazy nephew waiting in the parking lot. The donor is left weak and dizzy, watching his own life force being wasted on someone who did nothing to deserve it. And then the doctor has the nerve to ask for a tip. That is what it feels like to be a husband in this asset siphon dynamic. You are being mined for your vitality to support a family tree that is not even yours. And where does this all end? It leads to a future that looks like a total farce. We are heading toward a world where the only people who get married are the ones who are so rich they do not need to steal from each other, or the ones who are so cynical they sign a 50-page contract before they even hold hands. We are going to see a divided society. On one side, you will have the super clans where two wealthy families merge their assets, like a corporate acquisition. On the other side, you will have millions of people living in tiny studio apartments, refusing to even go on a date, because they are afraid of being scouted by a venture capitalist father-in-law. The lazy brother-in-law who got the free house, he will probably lose it in 5 years because he never learned how to work for anything. Wealth that is stolen from a sister's marriage rarely sticks around, because the person receiving it has no internal engine. The final joke is that the parents who tried so hard to save their son by exploiting their son-in-law will end up in a cheap state-run nursing home. Why? Because the son they pampered has no strength to take care of them, and the son-in-law they bled dry has blocked their phone numbers. They destroyed the only bridge they had to a comfortable old age, because they were too busy trying to rig the game. Does any of this sound like a functional way to build a society? Of course not. It is a system built on the death of reciprocity. When one side gives a 100 and the other side gives 0, the side giving a 100 eventually gets tired of being the only one holding up the roof. In a world where trust has been replaced by audits and love has been replaced by leverage, the only winning move is to stop playing. People are starting to realize that you cannot build a home on a foundation of theft. You can buy all the luxury apartments you want, but if the money used to buy them was taken through guilt and gaslighting, that building is eventually going to come crashing down. The marriage strike isn't just a trend, it is a rational response to a rigged system. It is what happens when a culture tries to run a modern economy on a medieval mindset of tribal greed. So, the next time you see a headline about the crashing birth rate or the death of marriage in this part of the world, don't just blame the economy or house prices. Look at the dinner table. Look at the mother-in-law demanding a palace while she hides a fortune for her son. Look at the daughter acting as a double agent, funneling her husband's salary back to a family that views him as a target. This is not a financial crisis, it is a moral one. It is the realization that if you treat your family like a business, don't be surprised when your children decide to go out of business entirely. The asset siphon has finally run dry, and all that is left is the cold, hard reality that you cannot eat prestige and you cannot live inside alive forever. It is a lonely, cynical end to a story that should have been about building something together, but instead became about who could walk away with the most loot. Fuel the truth at Dating in Korea. Support the structure. Stay safe in the lounge.